Let me take you on a journey of mystery, adventure, and superheroes. Introduce you to some of the reasons that we play certain video games, are drawn into blockbuster movies, and dress up in cosplay for things like Halloween and Comic-Con. My name is Jason Rosario, and I'll be sharing with you the history about one of my favorite pastimes, comic books. Prior to comic books and superheroes we know and love today, there were pulp heroes. Pulps were a small 10-cent book sold on newsstands, usually filled with action heroes going to exotic places and having adventures. And many of these stories were aired on the radio as a form of family entertainment. This pre-superhero is an unlikely one, but one of you may know who it is. We all know him as Popeye the Sailor Man. Popeye was created by L.Z. Cigar and first appeared in a strip called Thimble Theater in 1929. Though Popeye didn't go out and fight crime, he did eat spinach and display some above average feats of a human. His strength while fighting his nemesis Bluto and saving his olive oil. Though on February 17, 1936, everything changed with the introduction of the Phantom, created by Lee Falk. The Phantom was the first costumed hero. In 1936, another hero debuted, and that was called the Clock. The Clock appeared in comics called The Funny Pages #6. The Clock was a masked detective with normal human abilities who fought crime with bravery and death-defying stunts. The Clock was also the first instance that a character used a mask to hide his face. Thus, the trend of heroes using masks to disguise their true identity was born. In 1938, Action Comics #1 came out. Now, this is the name that will sound familiar to some of you. And that is because this comic was the first to feature a man in red and blue costumes lifting a car above his head. Rings a bell yet? Yup. This is the beginning of Superman, the very first comic character to have powers far beyond a normal human being. Superman, who was created by Siegel and Schuster since 1933 to pitch the Superman idea. They tried to pitch it at newsstands, but they were constantly turned down. Schuster, the artist who created Superman, once tore up his artwork and stated that he'd redo the character properly if the time ever came. Well, the time came, and the remade Superman is one of today's 10 most recognized heroes on the face of the planet. On the heels of Action Comics came another, and that's Detective Comics #27. It hit stands in May 1939, where we saw the first appearance of Batman. While Superman was pure and clean, Batman was grim, gritty. Batman, which was created by Bob Kane, survived popularity because the focus was on Batman's detective abilities, making his stories more of a mystery series than a superhero book. Batman was and still is so popular because he is a compromise between two types of heroes. He doesn't have superpowers, but he has intellect, a costume, and neat gadgets. Where do you get these cool toys that will put him on the same level with other superpowered heroes? At this point, comic books have taken off, and many names wanted in on the action, but not all made the cut, like the book called Motion Picture Funnies. Came out in 1939. This comic was to be given out of the free for movie theaters along the East Coast, but Change declined, so the comic did not take off. Another comic that emerged went through 3 different names before things worked out for them. The first was Timely Comics, the second was Atlas, and the third is a name we all know and come to love today as Marvel Comics. Martin Goodman was the owner of the Timely Publications and was the husband of Stan Lee's cousin. Stan Lee began his career at the comic at the age of 17, along with a group of great artists and editors. This group consisted of original greats like Steve Ditko, who created Spider-Man, Jack Kirby created Captain America, and Carl Burgos, who created the Human Torch. The famous Marvel Comics kept putting out comic books. As time went on, more comic book companies formed because of the success of DC and Marvel, like Prep Comics and Wiz Comics. These did not have the slaying power like DC and Marvel, though many of the characters that were competition for these big names. Wiz Comics had one hero named Captain Marvel, who was created by C.C. Beck. This character had staying power because children started to relate to his superhero more. And why? Because Billy Batson was a young boy who only had to say Shazam and become a powerful Captain Marvel. Boys started to relate to Captain Marvel more than Superman. Due to this, DC filed a suit against Fawcett Comics stating that Captain Marvel was a copyright infringement on their character Superman in 1953. The case settled out of court. Fawcett agreed to quit using the Captain Marvel character and pay DC a lump sum of $400,000. In 1973, DC revived the original Captain Marvel, which was even drawn by co-creator C.C. Beck. Comic books was now this force and began to change the passing of time, even to where the characters and stories evolved to keep up. Like for instance, Captain America, who first appeared in 1941, was a real American fighting Nazis long before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. The X-Men addressed real-life issues such as racism, not by segregation of color and separating people because they were mutants with powers. In 1967, Marvel Comics came up with their own version of Captain Marvel, a hero who they actually made die of cancer and actually never made him come back to life. In some miraculous way, now, many superheroes today do. The introduction of sidekicks helped to add the ability to relate to these heroes. Robin being introduced as a sidekick to Batman in 1940 allowed children who were orphans to feel like they had a possibility of being a superhero too. In 1941, Wonder Woman, she appeared going toe-to-toe with Batman and Superman. Not only could Wonder Woman battle them on equal terms, her book would last as long as theirs, which now gave women a hero. Comic books have come so far from simple radio shows of heroes with no faces to now being identifiable heroes on the big screen. Today, comic books are still diverse with heroes and have comic lovers as myself who still love to hold a thin book of colors, words, and characters and get lost in the stories as I did when I was younger. Since the grandiosity of comic books, heroes has become so epic, I felt learning the small, humble beginnings about their origin was something that was needed to be shared. I hope you all enjoyed learning a little insight on the history of comic books, and maybe I brought back a bit of that childhood curiosity of becoming a hero yourself one day. Thank you. Have a good night.